Welcome to the Leaderish Podcast with your hosts, Regina and Doris. Hey, Doris. How's it going?
Hey, Regina. It is going so well. Do you know what today is?
No?
It is our anniversary. We met 1 year ago today.
Are you serious?
On the walk.
How do you remember this stuff?
Well, I rejoined the walk yesterday. I had taken a break because they only meet really early on Wednesdays when school is out. So I rejoined for the first time in 6 or 7 months yesterday. And it just brought back all those memories of when you and I met, and I started doing the backwards math. And I looked at my calendar and realized that today, last year, 1 year ago today, we met on Heather's walk.
Okay, well, the only good thing about the walk was you. I'm kidding. Heather, if you're listening, that is not the truth. But let me tell you, and I've said this on the podcast like 10 times since you and I have recorded our 20-something episodes together. When we met, I was the slowest person in this walking group. I could not keep up. I mean, they run practically. I'm not a runner. You should see this body. It doesn't run. Doris, you stayed with me. And we talked and had such a wonderful conversation. At one point in time, I'm like, if you want to go catch up with the group, I can't.
I did not want to.
But go for it. And you were like, no, I'm fine right here. I'm enjoying our conversation. I was like, oh my gosh, I found my people. And look at us. It's been a full year since I found my people.
Yay. So happy anniversary.
God. Oh, happy anniversary, Doris. How exciting. That is so cool.
I know.
I love that. Thank you.
I know. I love those milestones.
I know. Me too. So besides our anniversary, what are we talking about today?
Our listeners can feel the positive energy that are happening right inside our conversation. And that's what we're going to talk about is positive energy and how to turn any negative or scary emotions into positive energy.
Oh, I love it. I love this topic. And the reason that I love this topic so much is that it was just a few weeks ago that I worked with my coach on exactly this. So I'll get into that a little bit more, and I'll share some of the techniques that he and I use together. And hopefully you'll get lots out of this episode today by listening to Doris and I talk through.
Yay.
Let's start off with what is nervous energy, though, because I think a lot of times we don't even recognize or we're unaware when we have nervous energy. What are some of the signs that you either physical or mental experience?
The physical signs that I experience is I can get sweaty palms. It kind of depends on the audience, too. It depends on how large of the audience or how nervous I am to make a good impression. And so if it's just a quick casual conversation or I'm leading a meeting, I might not experience that. But if I'm getting up on a stage and speaking in front of thousands of people, which I don't mind doing, but I can feel my hands get a little bit clammy. I can feel my blood pressure rising. I can feel my heart rate going up, maybe even a little sweaty in places other than my palms. Mm-hmm. That's probably the physical. Mentally, it's that fear of, I'm going to get it wrong. Where am I going to make the mistake? Have I practiced enough for this presentation? And so it's a little bit of fear of stumbling over my own words would be the mental anguish that I have. How about you?
Yeah, so similarly, I sweat in places that I don't normally sweat in. I get hot. I get just really hot. And I think that's kind of that amygdala taking over. It just uses so much power. I get really hot and heated. I have a lot of self-doubt and I beat myself up. My inner critic just goes nuts. And I'm like, I'm not good enough for this. I can't do this, even though I've done it before. It's not like at this age, there's not much that I haven't done as far as work goes, right? But those are usually the times where I get most nervous is when it is something that I'm getting ready to do with someone I don't know. And the heart starts pounding, the sweat happens. And then on top of all of that, my brain kind of short circuits a little bit when I'm super nervous, and I can say inappropriate things and use the 12-year-old humor that I have in my house, which is not appropriate in all situations. I had somebody once look at me and go, "Know your audience, Regina." And I was like, oh my gosh, that was all nervous energy. So I think that if we can pause for a second and you can think about what that nervous energy is for you, then that can help you bring awareness to it, because you can't change what you're not aware of.
Absolutely. When you listen to interviews with professional speakers or celebrities, they can get nervous as well. And you hear them talk about that nervous energy and turning that nervous energy around into positive energy. And you would never know. You'd never know that they were nervous before they went on stage.
But they probably were. And they have found a way to harness that nervous energy. In fact, and Walter's obviously nervous right now. If you're watching this episode, Walter is like doing circles behind me and just talking. So he's got a little nervous.
I think Walter has some input that he wants to share in this episode.
Yeah, he's a little loquacious. I think what he wanted me to say, though, is that nervous energy is just untamed energy. It is a little out of control. It is usually fed by your amygdala, or sometimes I call it the lizard brain, but that's kind of your fight or flight response. And it can come out a little wild. So I wanted to share that story, like of me getting really nervous and working with my coach. I was meeting with a new client, and I really wanted to work with this client. I was really excited about it. I was excited about the organization. They were just in my sweet spot. And I was excited because I had met with a couple of the people briefly over Zoom, and I really liked their energy. And I was so worried that when I went to kind of talk about here's the work that we can do together, that I would ruin it. My amygdala totally hijacked me. There was so much self-doubt. I was sure that I couldn't do it. I was sure that I would say something inappropriate with my 12-year-old humor that I have half the time. Although I had done this type of work before, I was so scared that I wouldn't be able to communicate how I could help this organization. So, needless to say, I go into my coaching session and my coach is like, "What do you want to talk about today?" I need to talk about this self-doubt. My coach is like, "Self-doubt? You?" I was like, "There's so much of it." And you could almost feel the nervous energy. It was palpable. My heart was racing. My hands were sweating. My pits were sweating.
So you imagined yourself in that meeting as you were talking to your coach.
Oh, yeah. And even before, because I was like, what do I want to talk to my coach about? Oh, I want to talk to him about this. And even before we met, I was having the nervous feelings. I was very aware of the energy that I had. And so we did take a minute and just kind of talked through it and what was I experiencing to bring more awareness to those feelings. And it was the same things that you were talking about: the racing heart, the blood pressure, the shaking hands, the racing thoughts, right? And then add in all of my self-doubt and my overthinking, and boom, there you had it. So I'll do just a quick spoiler alert. Everything went great. I got the client. I was totally prepared. So I'm so excited to share with you guys some of those things that I experienced to remove that nervous energy. And Doris, I know you have some great things to share as well on that.
Yeah, I was going to share that the emotions that we feel, that amygdala, it's amazing sometimes how either remembering a past occurrence or nervousness about a future occurrence, even though it's not happening in the moment, just remembering it or fretting about it or thinking about it happening in the future, it's amazing how much the amygdala can take over our brains, and we can feel all those physiological responses. We can literally start sweating. Our palms get very clammy, the blood pressure goes up, and we are in a safe space. So we have to find a way to remove ourselves and calm ourselves, even when it's not happening, so that when we're in the real situation, we can start calming ourselves ahead of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. And for me, what was getting my brain going were thinking about the negative behaviors that I might display in front of my client because of the nervousness. Think about that cycle. I'm nervous because I'm thinking about the behaviors that I display when I'm nervous, which makes me nervous, which makes me think about, you get it.
It's a circle. It's a vicious circle.
A circle, a spiral, a whatever. But boy, I was just going down the drain thinking about all of those. So once we realized that it was about the behaviors for me, then I was really able to anchor on the purpose and the behaviors that I wanted to demonstrate while I was in this meeting. For me, the purpose was around getting a client that I really wanted to work with and showing my best self, not my nervous self, not my 12-year-old humor self, boy humor at that. If it's a fart or a burp, it's funny in my house. And, figuring out where those behaviors are and what were the good behaviors, the positive energy behaviors that I wanted to display. And so we worked through that, and we worked through an entire list of behaviors. And how we started this was because my brain was stuck on all the negative nervous behaviors, then the question was, how do you behave when you're nervous? Well, I talk and I rattle on. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's the converse of that? What's the positive behavior? Oh,
pausing.
Well, I listen more than I speak.
Yep.
Yeah, those things. Pausing, silence. I listen more than I speak. Those things. And so thinking through, since my brain was stuck in negative, okay, so what's the negative? Another negative behavior when you're nervous. Well, I just throw out responses, and whatever is partially in my head comes out of my mouth. So what's the opposite of that? Be thoughtful. Mm-hmm. Again, pause.
Yeah.
Pause for a moment, take a breath, get your thought together before it comes out your mouth.
And it's also about active listening. If you respond too quickly, that's a sign that you haven't fully even heard the question or the comment that's being made by the other person.
That's exactly right. And actually, there's even another one in here. I'm looking at my list. I keep looking at my list because we actually hand wrote a list.
What else?
For me
What's
to
next
review
on the list?
before I went. Ask meaningful questions without creating defensiveness.
Tell me about the defensiveness.
Ooh, yes. So I would love to, because sometimes, especially when we're nervous, especially when I'm nervous, I ask questions to deflect from my own nervousness. And
what's an example? Give me an example of that.
Well, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Instead of that creates defensiveness.
Yes, it does.
So instead, using what questions? Well, what made you make that choice?
Yeah.
Then I can keep the conversation grounded without the defensiveness, and now we're working together to uncover the choices.
Yeah.
If that's the situation, right?
Yep. I know we've talked about why and how important that is, but putting it in a question in that way really creates animosity and creates defensive behavior, and somebody that may not want to work with you. Why would you do that?
That's right.
And that tone comes in there too. So it's a little bit about the tone.
Yeah, of course.
But why would you do that? I don't know that you can find a nice tone in asking that particular question. Why would you do that?
Yeah. Instead, asking those what questions really kind of lets the conversation free flow better, and it eliminates that defensiveness.
Yeah.
Why questions create defensiveness. When your amygdala is hijacked, why is the easiest way to get someone else talking? Then they get defensive and then they talk more.
Yeah.
Right? So asking what questions creates a more thoughtful response.
Yeah.
And it decreases that defensiveness.
Well, and even starting it, again, pausing and saying, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought about that. Can you tell me a little bit more about what brought you to that conclusion, or what brought you to that thought, that idea? And again, that calmed it way down. Not why would you do that, but that's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought about that. Can you tell me a little bit more? You just asked the exact same question, but you did it in an open way that calms that nervous energy, that negative energy just completely disappears when you change the way that you're asking those questions. I think that's
right.
really great advice from your coach.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'll do one more because I want to hear from you too. But so then the last one on here was around my 12-year-old sense of humor, farts and burps. So that was the negative behavior, right? And so the positive behavior is to use appropriate wit in the appropriate situations. So when I get nervous, everything can kind of become a joke, and sometimes it can be inappropriate. So just reminding myself to use wit in a professional way, because I'm funny. I mean, you and I talk about this. We both think we're really funny. I love to laugh at myself, and I love to laugh at other people. So, like, I want to do that. And I want to do it more when I'm nervous because it diffuses the tension for me. And so making sure that I understand that I need to use wit appropriately. So I took all of these negative behaviors that I demonstrate when I'm nervous, and I figured out what the positive behavior was, and I wrote down those positive behaviors. And for me, that really hard skill of thinking through the negative and then the converse of that and how I wanted to show up really helped ground me that I could do this.
Yeah.
I can do this. And then it all went away. It was the craziest thing. It all went away.
Yeah. I want to touch really quickly. You said something interesting. You said when you use inappropriate humor, it diffuses the energy, but it really only diffuses the energy for 1 second. Because I think
and it's only mine, I think. And then I start freaking out because I just talked about farts.
Well, exactly. The energy, it diffuses for a second, and then it actually probably triples because you realize that you said something inappropriate, and that nervous energy that you just calmed down with that very nice question, and you didn't ask the why question. And then you talked about farts, and the nervous energy was right back in full force. Right. And so diffusing that, or knowing that, use the wit when it's appropriate, and you will find when to do that. And this isn't for you, this is more for our listeners, knowing when to find that perfect spot to enter that humor. Yeah. And it's not, you don't know ahead of time. You don't know when that humor is going to be appropriate. You don't know when a joke is going to come up, but when it comes up, it's usually so natural and so funny that everybody in the room laughs.
Yeah, if it's from nervous energy, usually no one laughs.
No.
Yeah.
I've
experienced that many times. And then you're right, the triple nervous energy comes out, and then there's more, and it's a terrible spiral. What about you though, Doris? How do you shift nervous energy to positive energy?
Well, the good example is, and I know I've talked about Toastmasters before, and I highly recommend people, especially if you have a fear of public speaking, to join Toastmasters, because that's one of the best ways to get over that fear and that nervousness and learn how to convert nervous energy into positive energy. The more that you do it, it's a habit. The more that you do something. So the more clients that you talk to, Regina, the more audiences that a public speaker gets in front of, the faster and easier it is to diffuse that nervous energy and convert it to positive energy. So the first thing is, and we've talked about breathing before, is just try to calm yourself down just a little bit, but a little bit. It doesn't always work because those nerves are still going to be there, but at least trying to get the heart rate down. So your heart rate has gone up, quieting that heart rate or slowing that heart rate down a little bit through that breathing. but then maybe dancing, maybe singing. And of course, that's going to raise your heart rate, but in a positive way. But if you sit there and do jumping jacks before you get on stage, the heart rate might go up, but that nervous energy could come down. So trying to find that perfect balance of using that energy in a good way, and especially your body. If you're going to get up on stage, you're going to talk to 1,000 people, and you know you're nervous about that, it's okay to do some jumping jacks or to do some stretching or to literally just walk, stretch, shake it out. Maybe sing the Taylor Swift song in your mind. All of those things will take that energy and turn it into something that your audience will never know that you're nervous. And you've taken that energy and moved it into a positive light. And I will do that in Toastmasters. Even if it's a small audience, I will still get nervous about, am I going to flub the speech that I've practiced? But once I get going, once I say the first 2 or 3 words, it usually fades away. That those nerves, surprisingly, will fade away. So sometimes it's taking that first step, just beginning. Mountain biking, just going down that hill, just rolling down that hill, skiing, go take that first step. A lot of times that's all that it takes for you to then convert that energy, because you don't have a choice. You're going down a mountain with those skis. You got to figure out how to get to the bottom of the mountain. You're speaking in front of a large audience. Say those first 2 or 3 words. You might be surprised at how easily the rest of that speech or that talk or that workshop will flow from you.
You know what's so funny, Doris? That just reminded me. First of all, my example was just like a small group meeting. It was just a couple people, right? Your example is really around public speaking and stuff like that. So I love that juxtaposition there, because there's different ways to do each of these things. I was thinking about when I see speakers and sometimes they get a rocky start. And that happens the first 5 seconds. And then all of a sudden they launch in and they are in the zone. Mm-hmm. And so I think it doesn't matter if it is your behaviors that you're writing down like I did, or you're breathing and you're shake it off, do some jumping jacks. It is finding your way to get into your zone, your positive zone.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about here. But you have to have the awareness to know that you're not in your positive zone. You're in your nervous zone, or your negative zone, or your apprehensive zone, or your fear or scarcity zone. Whatever zone that is, you are not in the good zone.
No. Well, it's a fear of judgment. In all of these examples, it's that fear, like, what will someone think about me or say about me, or am I going to get this client, or am I going to get the applause, or am I going to get my point across? It's all of that nervousness. And am I dressed appropriately? Do I have lipstick on my teeth like I did for the last episode, which I do not today? I don't think anyone judged me for that, though.
And even before we started recording, let me check your teeth. Do you have lipstick? And that was great.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, there is that fear of judgment. Most of our negative emotions, though, do come from fear of some sort. Mm-hmm. If we can recognize it and figure out how do we combat that fear, then that is our way through. And we talked about 2 really good ways. We talked about anchoring to your purpose and behaviors. And we also talked about reframing that physical response and, moving and doing some breath work and all of that good stuff. Mm-hmm. So I love that.
And one other thing, because you talked about purpose, and I definitely think that's very important that we know what is the outcome that we want from this, whether it's a presentation, workshop, whatever it is. What is the outcome that we desire? But then be okay if it's not exactly the outcome that we want. So let's say, for example, that the client had said no, and you would have been very disappointed, but it would have been okay. You went into that more prepared. You went into it. You talked to your coach. He gave you some tips. You talked through it. You probably, at the end of your presentation, you were pretty satisfied with how you presented yourself, and you didn't have any fart jokes in there. And
Not one.
Not one. That's congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like that's like a pretty big feat. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And if that client had said either no, thank you, or not yet, or I'll give you a call 2 months from now, again, you would have been disappointed, but you would have been okay and satisfied with the presentation that you gave on that day because you did everything that you could to create the outcome that you desired. Even if the outcome didn't happen exactly as you had hoped, you did everything that you could, and you should be proud of yourself for doing everything that you could.
To add to that, just a little bit more, is that nothing is a failure if you learn from it.
100%. Yes.
I mean, I had to learn at some point in my life that the nervous energy does not do me well. I had to learn that. And one of those situations was where a coworker looked at me and said, know your audience.
Yeah.
Or read the room. I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the, I've heard both of those because of the nervous energy. I've had several people in my life tell me, know your audience and read the room because of how the nervous energy is demonstrated in my behaviors.
Yeah. And that's the important part is how is it demonstrated? You're still going to be nervous. That next client that you have, you're still going to be nervous before you before you go in that room. But you know what behaviors you need to demonstrate when you go in that room. So taking that nervous energy and converting it into something that's positive, because we still want energy. That's the other thing. We haven't talked about the fact that energy is really, really important, and people will buy into the energy. If you're selling something, it doesn't matter if it's Girl Scout cookies or a new program. You have to have energy when you're selling that. When you're selling yourself, your product, your service, you want to have that really good positive energy, and you need to hire me. You need to buy from me because I know what I'm talking about and I have high energy. If you take that nervous energy and it melts you or it dissolves you into a puddle of mud and you're able to get the words out, but you have no energy at all because you're nervous, that doesn't work either.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that you can build positive energy habits over time. And I think that by me recognizing where I was in this kind of nervous state and this nervous energy field, that is a habit that I have built over time to recognize it. It didn't just happen overnight. I mean, a lot of people have told me, read the room, know your audience. And there's some other things that you can do if you journal, writing some of those things down when you feel that nervous energy. You can even start an affirmation practice where you reassure yourself with your confidence to help with some of that, or to reassure yourself, in my case, of some of the behaviors that I display when I am in a positive energy mode and I am confident, not overconfident, because that's nervousness too. So
I'm curious about something. When someone told you read the room, maybe it was the first time or the second time, how did that make you feel? Did that make you feel defensive? Like, I didn't do that? Or did it make you feel more, oh gosh, I wasn't aware of that. I need to change that next time. You said it didn't happen overnight. So how long, how many times, or tell me the process of how it worked from the first time someone said, read the room, no more fart jokes, to you actually didn't have any more fart jokes.
Gosh, you've stumped me on this one, Doris. It was probably about 15 years ago when the first person, and I remember the situation, I had said something inappropriate, and I was younger. I was probably early 30s, late 20s, and I had said something inappropriate in front of a woman of another generation. She was a grandmother. I didn't even have kids. I wasn't even married. Like, I'd said something a little inappropriate. She's in a totally different stage of life. And that's when I kind of got the read the room. Okay, it's fine for us girls to talk about those things, but that's not something she needs to hear. And I remember that was the first time that I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew exactly what I did. It I mean, it wasn't like earth-shattering inappropriate, but it was not appropriate for her. And then I've had a few other situations where I've had leaders or peers come back to me, especially when I was nervous, and I was able to correlate those things together. And so putting that pattern together, it took a little while to put the pattern together and a lot of reflection to figure out what the pattern was. The pattern was when I had nervous energy, when I was nervous, I used inappropriate humor, I prattled on, I asked questions that got people defensive. So it took people caring enough about me to give me feedback. And then I was able to catch myself, and then now I'm able to completely stop myself. I just don't normally do those behaviors, but sometimes need a reminder because I'm afraid I'm going to go back to that. And that's what this was. It was fear that I was going to go back to that nervous Regina, even though in my, older, wiser years, I can control that to some degree, except when it comes to fart jokes.
I think what I heard is that preparation is key. Knowing when you're going into an important meeting, an important presentation, that you spend some time preparing what it is you want to say, how you want to present, maybe even practice if you have the time to practice. And they talk about that, they being the professional speakers, the people that do workshops all the time. They talk about preparing your workshop. Even if you've done it before, if it's been a minute, get in front of your computer, get in front of a mirror. That's what I do. When I have to give a speech, I get in front of the mirror and I pretend the mirror is my audience, and I will practice what it is that I want to say. It doesn't mean I have to memorize every word. Another key element that I think really helps if you're giving a presentation is at least have an outline. I remember there was a CEO, and he was one of the best speakers at Farmers Insurance, and he could talk for an hour with no notes, and he was fabulous. He was so good. And I had a chance to talk to the person that helped write his speeches. He didn't necessarily write his own speeches. And it would start with writing the full speech, and then it would change to bullet points, very long bullet points. And then the third one was one-word bullet points. And he would use that to help him along. And he knew that at the end, he memorized just the bullet points, that very last one, those were memorized. So he knew that he had 5 points he had to make, A, B,
That's
C,
right.
D, E. And if he just memorized those 5 points, he remembered all the other stuff because he had practiced it enough. He knew the material enough that he was able to go into that presentation with a minimal amount of bullets. And of course, if you're giving a presentation, you've got PowerPoints, and those PowerPoints can have a minimal amount of words, a minimal amount of bullets, but it guides you along to saying the words that you want to say. Again, not memorizing word for word, but giving the points that you want to share so that at the end of the presentation, your audience understands what it is that they need to understand and what outcome needs to happen as a result of this meeting or this workshop.
I love it. Thanks for that little extra nugget there on presentations. I appreciate that. Well, it looks like Walter's getting a little restless. So let's go ahead and wrap up with some final thoughts. Any final thought or takeaway for you, Doris?
I would say, I'm reading these notes too, and I love this one quote: you don't need to be fearless to show up fully, just willing. I think that is a great quote. So you don't have to be, you don't need to be fearless to show up fully, just willing. So we talked about having fear and nervous energy. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be able to take that fear and be willing to work towards something.
Right. Yeah, with purpose.
With purpose, yes.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. Well, see, Walter, he's got all the nervous energy right now. I got to tell you, what a fun episode with Walter barking in the background. I think I'm going to go back to the nervous energy is just untamed energy. That's what it is.
Good.
It's just untamed energy. And if we can tame it a little bit and get it right where we want it so that we can use that energy for good, then we're all set.
Love it.
Me too. All right. Oh, wow. He hasn't been this loquacious since the days of Jen and I. I don't think he's shown up in an episode for like 2 years. Walter, stop. Oh boy. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up because I think I need to let the dog out. We'd love to talk to you. So you can find all of our links in the show notes and leave us a review if you would. 5 stars would be awesome. And if you can write a comment on whatever platform you get your podcast or on YouTube, that really helps us. Walter agrees 100%. He's telling you right now, leave a 5-star review. That's enough.
And he's also, I think I heard him say, please share the episode with people that could find value out of the episode.
Well, you nailed it. I didn't know you spoke Walter as well as I did.
I do.
But yes, he did say, share this because every time you share an episode with a friend or a family member or a complete stranger, then that does help us get more visibility. So we would love for you to share that. Give us a like and subscribe. We're now on YouTube. If you didn't know, you can watch us as we talk. You can actually see the lipstick on Doris's teeth if you would like to. That would be in episode 12, season 4, episode 12. There's a great little lipstick there. I didn't notice it either. So you'll have to zoom in or maybe make it big. I don't know. Put it on your TV. That's what you want to do. Watch the whole episode on your television. Stream it on your television on YouTube. And then you can see Doris's lipstick. She's going to hate that. She's going to cut this out.
I am.
Okay, fine. All right. Well, Doris, I guess let's wrap it up. How about a cheers?
Cheers. And happy anniversary again.
Happy anniversary.